Well, what is up, everyone? What's up to those watching online? What's up to my people in Norfolk? Love you. We love getting to hear how people are making it personal. Thank you, John, for sharing that video. We've been in this series called Limits for a couple of weeks now. And if you're someone who's a little bit adventurous, maybe you're someone who likes to push the envelope, maybe your life is very expansive, you're like, why are we talking about limits? This is so lame. Well, what we've been seeing over the last few weeks is this. What if, instead of limiting our potential, embracing limits actually unlocks our potential? What if embracing our limits actually unlocks something that if we didn't have a limit, we wouldn't get where we want to be? I want to start us off today by showing you a video clip from one of the most famous movies of all time. That movie is The Lion King, The Lion King. Now, if you're someone who's a little bit younger, maybe you don't know who The Lion King is, shame on every adult in your life for not showing you The Lion King because you need to see this. I think there was one that came out, live action version, a couple years ago, but we're gonna watch the original cartoon. And just to give you a little bit of context for this clip, Simba is this lion prince who was born into a kingdom, and his dad is the king, but his dad dies. And so it becomes dangerous for him. The kingdom begins to fall apart. So as a young lion, he goes away to another place, and he meets these other two animals, Timon and Pumbaa. They kind of relax, they chill. He kind of starts to hide from what's going on back in the kingdom where he kind of is the rightful heir to the throne. So he's chilling, he's hanging out, he's kind of avoiding his responsibility. And then he has this vision from his dad, a vision of his dad who has passed away. And that's the clip I would love to show you. Check this out.
Forgotten me.
No. How could I?
You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. Look inside yourself, Simba. You are more than what you have become. You must take your place in the circle of life.
How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be.
Remember who you are. You are my son, and the one true king.
No, please, don't leave me.
Remember.
Father.
Remember.
Don't leave me.
Remember.
Remember, Simba, remember who you are. You are my son and the one true king. The limit in Simba's life was his identity, who he was. And it made it so he couldn't stay hiding and relaxing, having fun when the kingdom was falling apart. His identity was one of the most important limits in his life. And as we dive into a passage of scripture today, what I'd love to submit to you is that one of the most important limits in your life is your identity. Who you are, your identity determines so much of the boundaries and the limits that we have in our life. This is something we see all around us in different ways. One of the ways I was thinking about it this week was my older sister. When she was in elementary school, she had this unfortunate occurrence where she cursed out the cafeteria worker at her school. She used some choice language. And my mom confronted her after the end of the day, right? She got in trouble for it. She was sent to the office or what have you. And my mom talked to her, and I bet you can imagine how that conversation went. My mom said, "Do you know who you are? You're my daughter. You're a Levis. We don't do that in our family. We don't talk like that. We don't treat adults that way in this family." My sister didn't realize her identity, who she was, and how it impacted her behavior. Your identity is one of the most important limits in your life. And so I want to focus today on this theme of identity, and I want to ask you this question. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey today, do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? See, it's important to have an answer to this question if you're a follower of Jesus, whether you're newer to faith, whether you've been following him for a long time. Do you know who you are? Do you believe it in the depth of who you are. Maybe you're not a person of faith. Maybe someone invited you today. I'm so glad that you're here because today we're going to see that God gives us another option, another alternative to what everyone else is telling us defines us. There's so many different ways that we can find our identity in so many different things. But there is another way. And we're going to see it today as we look in the letter of 1 John. We're going to dive in chapter 3. This is a letter to the early church written by this guy, John, and he starts in verse 1 like this. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. John starts off this chapter with this statement of our identity. If you've put your faith in Jesus, he died and rose again so that you could be welcomed into a new family and embrace a new identity. You are a child of God. And there's just this kind of like awkward phrase right afterwards that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. It's almost like John is like trying to convince us because he thinks we're not convinced by this first part. Yeah, we get it, John. That's what you just said. That is what we are. I had a new way of thinking about this verse come up a few weeks ago. We had our outdoor worship event at Mount Trashmore just a few Saturdays ago, and we sang the song, Who You Say I Am. And it's a song where in the chorus it says, I'm a child of God, yes, I am. And that lyric has always kind of felt weird to me. Okay, I'm like saying I'm a child of God, and then I'm affirming it, yes, I am, like I don't believe it. But this is actually, I'm wondering if that lyric comes from this passage. This idea of John saying, you are called children of God, that is what you are. Confirming, affirming that identity. And he's kind of setting up the very next verse in verse 2 when he repeats this identity, dear friends, now we are children of God. But he talks about how this identity will only really be revealed in the future. And what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. We are children of God, but we won't fully realize that, or it won't be made known until the future. We shall see it. And it's why this identity of being a child of God is something that you live by faith. You have to have faith. It's not always immediately obvious that God is your Father, that you are a child of God. I think about it somewhat like adoption. There are many families in our church who've adopted children, and it's one of the most beautiful things. Maybe you've been adopted in your life. But one of the things that happens often from an outside perspective is a lot of times that child, particularly if they're a little bit older when they get adopted, there's a little bit of skepticism and there's some walls up emotionally, relationally for that child. And oftentimes rightfully so. Maybe they've had some traumatic experiences. Maybe they've gotten their hopes up with another family. It didn't work out. But that child will oftentimes not trust the fact that these people are treating them as their kid. And what you see is for these parents who have gone at great lengths to commit themselves to this child, it's heart-wrenching, it's heartbreaking for them to see just how wrong that assumption is because of how much love they have for this child. They've committed to them, they've prayed for them, they've fallen in love with them, they've paid thousands of dollars just to meet them. And will pay tens of thousands of dollars to make sure they have the life and the education and the food and the shelter that they need and that they deserve. And for that child to doubt that for a second is too long. It's too long. And I think a lot of times we are similar in our relationship with God. God has shown his love and his commitment to us in incredible ways. He's the provider of everything we need. He's the giver of every good thing in our life. Not only that, he's proved his love for us by sending his son to die for us, to bleed for us. He's gone to that great of lengths, and yet so often it's so easy to doubt his care for us, to doubt that he's there, to doubt his presence in our lives, to doubt that he's our Father who loves us and cares about us. And 1 John is coming to us today. God, through his word, is coming to us today and say, yes, you don't see it quite right now, but I guarantee you one day you will know that right now you can bank on the fact that I'm your dad, that you're my kid, that I care about you. And if you're here and you're not a person of faith, you're not a Christian, this is what you're invited into. Not a new set of rules, not a new club, not even a new religion, but a new family where God is your dad and he cares about you, a new identity where you are his son, you are his daughter. So if this is our identity, what does it mean? What does it mean for our lives? What does it mean for our behavior? How do we live differently because of this new identity? Well, as we're going to see in our passage, when you embrace a new identity, you embrace new limits. When you embrace a new identity, you embrace new limits. We read in verse 3, all who have this hope in him, all who are children of God, purify themselves just as he is pure. John says one of the limits that we have in our lives because of this identity is purity. We live a life of purity. And he goes on to explain what that means in a few verses later. He continues, no one who lives in him keeps on sinning. No one who continues to sin has either seen him or known him. Dear children, again, reaffirming who we are. Do not let anyone lead you astray. The one who does what is right is righteous, just as he is righteous. I'm going to focus on this first phrase and kind of the theme right here. This is where the passage starts to get a little bit more intense. We've seen the intensity of God's love for us, the intensity of this incredible identity we have as children of God, but then he talks about what it means. It means that no one who lives in this keeps on sinning. A few weeks ago, we're in the first week of this series in chapter 1 of 1 John. We read, if anyone claims to be without sin, he is a liar, and the truth is not in them. So what is John saying here? If anyone who keeps on sinning is not a part of the family, what does that mean? Well, it can't mean that we never sin. It can't mean that we never struggle. It can't mean that we never fail, because he literally said we're liars if we claim that. So what's going on here? Well, what's going on here is John is saying, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you put your faith in God, your heavenly Father, and what he's done on your behalf, you are now a part of his family. You are now a child. You are a part of his kingdom. And it means that you reject anything that will go against that new identity. And it doesn't mean you don't struggle. And it doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. But it means that you don't make friends with sin in your life. We talked about a few weeks ago that sin is missing the mark. It's an archery term. If the bullseye of life is to live the way God intends for us to live at every moment, we've all missed that mark. And so if there are ways that we have patterns, if we have habits, if we have inclinations of ways that we would not live in the way that is best for us, we don't become friends with it. We don't embrace those things. We never get to say, oh man, I know that's not right, but it's not really that big a deal. And what's cool is that 1 John helps us see why that is. It's because that behavior, that sin, that pattern goes against our identity. It goes against who we are. Your identity limits your behavior. Your identity becomes the limit of your behavior. Who you are limits your behavior. We continue to see kind of this intense way of talking from John here. The one who does what is sinful is of the devil. Whoa, okay. The one who does what is sinful is of the devil, because the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. The devil has been sinning from the beginning, and so when we embrace a sinful lifestyle, a sinful pattern in our lives, we have to recognize who invented that pattern, who was the one who paved that way, who was the one who blazed that trail. It was Satan from the very beginning, and that's why Jesus came to destroy the devil's work. What we see is that the more that you live outside of this identity as God's child, the more you have other things, other influences, other forces controlling your behavior and leading you away from what is best. It means that those forces have a source that is inherently evil and dark and set up in opposition to God. And that's the very reason why Jesus came into the world, to break the power of the evil one in our lives, the power of temptation, the power of sin, and give us a new identity where we no longer have to live an old way of life. We can embrace this new way of being. And what's cool about 1 John is the way that we let go of this sin. The way we let go of this old life and embrace a new one is not by trying harder. It's not by feeling more guilty. It's not by beating ourselves up. It's actually by doing what Simba needed to do in The Lion King. Remember who you are. Simba was never going to get off his lion butt and leave the relaxation and the fun and the lack of responsibility of where he was unless he recognized the limit of identity in his life and went and embraced his destiny to restore the kingdom. Now, what's cool about that illustration is I think it helps us see that limits are actually not exactly what we always think they are. We think of limits as being a no, right? Even as we've been talking about sin, maybe you've been thinking about things, man, okay, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, no to that. And that's true in a way, but what we recognize is that a no to something is always a yes to something else. Simba's no to a life hiding and running away was actually a yes to what he was always called to do. My sister, who had some choice words to share, her no to that language was actually a yes to respect and honor and maturity and being the person that she was being raised to be. Your identity limits your behavior. Who you are limits you, but it also is not just a no, it's also a yes to something better. I want to share a story that is one of the ways I've seen this apply in my own life more recently. And before I go into it, I want to give some context because it involves the topic of alcohol. And I don't know where you're at in terms of your experience with alcohol. For me, I'm at a place where socially, I drink every once in a while. I have a drink or two. Maybe if I'm somewhere for a long time and I've eaten some food, I'll have a third one, particularly if it's free. But we know there are many people in our church, maybe you've decided not to drink. Maybe it's because of a conviction that you have. Maybe it's because of an addiction that you've had. And I share this story, to share just a real story of how faith has been impacting me in my life, and not at all to make you question your convictions, and certainly not to tempt you or unintentionally give you permission to embrace something that's been destructive in your life. So with that, last weekend, I was at a wedding. I was doing a wedding for a couple from the Norfolk campus, and there was a cocktail hour before the reception, and at the cocktail hour, there was an open bar, and like many people, I went and got a drink. I got a truly hard seltzer. It was a black cherry flavor because I'm secure in my masculinity. A little bit later on, like while we were in the room sitting down at our tables, there were speeches, there were dances. I had a glass of wine at the table. A little bit later on, we started to eat dinner, and for dinner, I got another hard seltzer. This time it was black cherry because I'm tough and I can handle it. No, I'm just kidding. And then someone got up from the table. They went to go get some more food or get some more drink, and they pointed at me and they said, "Ryan, do you want another one?" And in that moment, I had a choice, and it may have looked like it was a behavior choice. Do I flirt with possibly getting drunk at this wedding? But what it actually was an identity choice. It was a choice to live into my identity as the officiant of this wedding, also as a pastor of some of the people who were at this wedding, but mainly my identity as a follower of Jesus, as a child of God. There's not really that different rules for pastors versus not pastors. Like, we're all children of God. We all follow Jesus. We all have boundaries, and that identity is a limit in our lives. I didn't need to get drunk to have fun at this wedding. I didn't need to substance to help me to enjoy my time. I didn't need to push the envelope, even if it would have been okay for me. No, I'm a child of God. I'm a follower of Jesus. I have limits in my life, and that no to that extra drink was also a yes to something better. And was that moment like this real existential crisis where I was resisting the works of the devil? No, it was a normal wedding and a normal moment, but my identity informed that decision. And that identity is going to inform your decision if you decide not to drink at all, or how you relate to these different temptations in life. Your identity limits your behavior. And I'm going to read these last two verses of the passage we're looking at today. And what I want you to see is as John is talking in very intense ways about the devil and God and how we relate as children of God in the world, he roots it in identity. He uses all these different phrases that kind of keep coming out and cascading through these verses. No one who is born of God will continue to sin, because God's seed remains in them. They cannot go on sinning because they have been born of God. This is how we know who the children of God are and who the children of the devil are. Anyone who does not do what is right is not God's child, nor is anyone who does not love their brother and sister. You see, even this last phrase, loving your brother and sister, is a reminder of you're in a new family now. You have brothers and sisters that are not biological, that you're called to love. If we go back to that verse 8, we see you're born of God. God's seed remains in you. You are children of God. This rootedness in your identity leads you to a place where you can experience freedom from doing what is wrong. Yes, we sin. Yes, we make mistakes. We deceive ourselves if we don't admit that. But we have to embrace this new identity if we're ever going to get to the point where we experience freedom and patterns and habits and new ways of relating to the world. Where do you have a sin problem? Where do you have a behavior problem? I'm going to submit to you today that that is not actually a behavior problem, it's an identity problem. You don't know who you are. Do you know who your Father is? Do you know who you're called to be? Do you know who you belong to? Do you know who you represent in your life? This question, this refrain, do you know who you are? It's one of the best ways to overcome these sinful habits and patterns in our lives. Do you know who you are? Maybe this week you're going to get angry or annoyed or frustrated at someone around you. You can reject that behavior and that attitude because do you know who you are? You're a child of God. And we don't embrace that way of being. Maybe this week you're gonna be out on a walk or at the grocery store and you're gonna see someone that you find physically attractive. And you're gonna be tempted, even though you don't know them at all, to objectify and maybe fantasize and maybe even sexualize that person. In that moment, can you ask the question, do you know who you are? I'm a child of God. That's not how I behave. That's not what I do. Maybe this week you're gonna really struggle to believe and to trust God for whatever's happening in your life. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you're just doubting God in your life. Do you know who you are? Maybe we all need a little bit of advice from Mufasa today, from the Lion King. Remember who you are. You are my son. You are my daughter. Where have you been proposing a behavior solution to what is only an identity problem? I want to give us all a gift today, and it's time to reflect on this in our own lives. And we're actually going to have, at both campuses, Kurt and Jason come out and play the song, Who You Say I Am, that I mentioned earlier with the lyric, I am a child of God, yes, I am. And I'd encourage you during this time, wherever you're sitting, whether that's online, whether that's here in the room, I would encourage you to reflect and to think of the ways that behavior or sin has its root in our lives and where God might want to bring an identity solution to what we thought was only a behavior problem. Let me pray for us. Father, we are so grateful for Jesus. Thank you for the ways that he has redeemed, that he has saved, that he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son that you love. You've brought us into the kingdom of Jesus where he rules and he reigns. Lord, help us to submit ourselves. For those who are feeling some conviction today about something in our lives, would we have the grace and the help to submit to King Jesus? Lord, I pray for anyone today who maybe is feeling condemnation or is feeling guilt or shame. Those feelings only lead one place, and it's away from you, Lord. Thank you for your grace that brings conviction without condemnation. Thank you for your joy and the life that you're offering us. I pray that we would all embrace this new identity and embrace what you're calling us to. I pray over the next few moments that we would all hear from you, that we would ask you, show me who I am. Show me how my identity is this limit so I can say no to something, to say yes to something better. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.